Thank you. I now call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order at 7:06 p.m. Please call the roll. Microphone.
Ms. Pearson?
Present.
Mr. Rollins? Mr. Scrivano?
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Here.
Mr. Siegel?
Here.
Mr. Connor?
Here.
Ms. Stanford?
Here.
With 7 present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll now take a moment of silence to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. We start each board meeting, it bears reminding that the mission of Rockford Public Schools is to collaboratively engage all students in a first-class education, changing world. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank Connor, who's working in the backgrounds to help produce our broadcast. And if you have any magic for all the microphones, we'd appreciate it. Okay, so we are now at the petitions and communications portion of our meeting, when we invite the public to make comments. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the rights of citizens to petition their government, as well as provides for freedom of speech. So the Illinois School Code requires that there be a time at regular and special meetings for public comment. Thus, we are following those mandates during this petitions and communications portion of our agenda. According to Board Policy 2.230, the public comments portion of the meeting is limited to a total of 30 minutes. The board will not respond to comments at this time. If it is appropriate, you'll be contacted in a timely manner by staff in response to your questions. In order to allow sufficient time for the business of the board and to conduct our meetings in an efficient and effective manner, we are requesting that you comply with the guidelines that are posted, and each speaker will be allowed no more than 2 minutes. It's not appropriate to address individual board members or individual administrators or discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such open meetings. We just have one speaker tonight. Thank you for your interest and your cooperation. And that speaker is Sophia Buchanan. Sophia, are you online?
I am here.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. Well, as you know, my name is Sophia Buchanan. I am the committee chairperson for education and representation of the NAACP. I'm here to speak on behalf of Trevor Christopher, a science teacher at East High School. The concern we have is the premature decision to have Trevor Christopher reviewed for a non-renewal of his position. NAACP are in opposition of this decision based on the circumstances of the request for non-renewal of his position due to Mr. Trevor Christopher's evaluation, which was noted as needs improvement. We are requesting a full review of the decision in which the administration at East High School has made. We would like to know a few different things. Was the recommendation made by a certified administrator or the dean? A notice of the evaluation letter was received by the teachers from the principal, Jim Parker, at the beginning of the school year, which stated that if a teacher receive evaluation which was needs improvement rating, will be provided to the peer assistant and review coordinator and the REA. Mr. Christopher has yet to receive any review coordinator or peer assistant. In this instance, was the teacher provided a mentor? Is one of the big questions. and was he given an opportunity to show improvement? And also at the end, pretty much we want to know if the steps that are things that he has done, are they should they be led up to a terminal sentence?
Sophia, thank you for your time. We are now on to board member comments. Are there any board member comments at this time? Pearson.
Yes, I just want to take this time to thank a few members of the Park District, Mickey Lynch, Danielle Potter, and Cameron Mohammed for having a panel discussion and representing Black History Month. It was a joy speaking with the young adults, or teens, better said, teens at high school level. And I just want to encourage them that I understand that we're in very challenging times, but stay the course. And I want to just encourage you to do what you need to do. We'll soon be back in the classrooms, and just stay focused and do the best you can. Again, I enjoyed speaking with you all, and continue to strive to be better. Thank you.
Any other board member comments? Okay, seeing none. Ms. McCullough, go ahead.
So I have, for the past 3 weeks, my excitement every morning when I go to get the paper, because we still get a hard copy of the paper as well as what we read online, is to pull the sports section and take a look at our students who have gained the privilege of playing sports again, despite us continuing in the pandemic. One thing that goes with this privilege is the responsibility to wear a mask. And whether or not we agree or disagree as to the necessity of that, especially with high school children, that's the rule. IHSA has put that rule out there, and it is up to us to follow it. It's up to our coaches to enforce it. It's up to the refs to enforce it. I went to Dr. Jarrett with this early on, when it was apparent that students weren't just having mask slippage below their nose, but were wearing them under their chins. And that was a couple weeks ago. And Dr. Jarrett has been wonderful at reaching out to all the districts, because obviously this isn't just something that's happening in Rockford. And the problem is, how do you enforce something in Rockford that nobody's enforcing in the rest of the districts? Because goodness gracious, we might lose a game because we had to pull a student who was an exemplary player because he didn't follow the rules and wear his mask. There has been some progress. They've been moving up a little bit over the mouth, but they're still hanging low on the nose. And it's real evident that it's not consistent across all the schools. If you watch the sports at night, I love the Sunday paper. I've been saving him. The toughest guy in the conference is on the front page of the sports section. He's from Jefferson, but he doesn't have his mask up above his nose. It's hanging down. The gentleman playing against him, and as well as the 3 pictures on the inside of that Sunday paper, have both Jefferson and Guilford students. And I'm going to give a shout out, because all the pictures I can find, our Guilford students have their masks on. So it can be done. I don't know what their coach is doing, or their AD. I don't know why one school seems to get it and the rest have such a hard time. And again, it's a privilege. There's a rule. We need to follow the rule. There's consequences for the rule not being followed. And I understand that it's hard for coaches because they don't want to pull players, but if we could work with our referees. I was saying to Dr. Jarrett today that it's, the season is so short, it's going to come to an end before we move anywhere on this. But at the end of the day, we've got another season. We've got volleyball coming up. We've got other sports, and we're not out of this pandemic. And let's just say rules are meant to be followed, and consequences. So thank you to Dr. Jarrett. Thank you to whatever the Guilford coach is doing. And I did talk to Ms. Holdley about this. And she said there are ways that we can, through policy, have it enforced. I'm probably, alone in my concern, but I'd love to know how, and we don't have to take a lot of time on the floor to do this, but if anybody else feels like we should do anything to make sure that the coaches understand how important it is that it's followed. Thanks for all that time.
Any other board member comments? Right, our next item on our agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Jarrett.
I do not have a report this evening, Mr. Scribano. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, we will proceed to item number 5, which is the report and action items that proceeded through the Internal External Stakeholder Relations Committee. Mr. Siegel, any follow-up items?
Thank you. I have just one thing, and that is to report on 3 observations I had from our latest student listening session. We are gathering information to address some of the equity issues as part of our larger work with the National Equity Project. I'm going to have a more full report at the Committee of the Whole meeting next Tuesday, but because I just had this meeting, I wanted to just share 3 observations. I hope that there will be continued listening sessions in the upcoming years. This last meeting, there were more students all engaged in very high-level discussion, and second observation was the comments that they were making I think took a lot of courage to say to a group of adults. The thing that really struck me was how students from other schools were able to affirm comments coming from students at another school in completely different grades, and that the recognition of those experiences as being common added a lot of veracity to what the students were saying. And I felt like they really discussed this in a very very mature fashion, and a very generous fashion at that. My last observation was, while we had a lot more participation and it was very high level, still don't have any representation from Jefferson High School. And I think it's important that we get contributions from each of the schools. While the engagement has been rich and it's been across the district, I think it'd be very important to the improvement of the district, and it would be a benefit to the other students at the other schools, them to hear input from Jefferson. I want to presume to say that Jefferson is going to be greatly improved by their involvement in the listening sessions, and suggest that they might. And I am certain that they would have a good deal to contribute. So I'm certainly hoping that we will see them the next listening session. Do have coming up staff listening session, which I'm very eager to hear that. And I believe that we will have, and maybe Mr. Dotson Jr. can back me up on this, listening sessions with middle school students. Will that be coming up for the end of this year? Desire.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next is a report on action items that proceeded through the Performance Monitoring Committee. Mrs. McCulloch.
Thank you, Mr. Scrivano. There's one additional item that we did not cover in our Committee of the Whole. It was originally supposed to come to us in January, and it's just a bid. Followed through the normal procedures. What it doesn't say in your executive summary is the fact that it's the reason it's a rebid is we only had one bid in December. We put it out. We got one bid in January, and so we put it out again, and we had 5 bids. And one of the difficult things about this is that we only budgeted $58,000 for this freezer, and it came in at $80,000 at the lowest bid and $150,000 at the highest. I just want to give kudos to purchasing for putting it out again, because the single bid we had was for $118,000. So they've managed to save us almost $40,000 by going through the process a second time. Other than that, we've covered everything previously. Thank you.
Our next is follow-up on the Planning and Development Committee items. Mr. Rollins.
The Planning and Development Committee does not have any follow-up for this meeting.
Right, okay. All right, so next is me on the follow-up from the Committee of the Whole, and I just wanted to open up a discussion again about our operating guidelines, and this has to do with the issue of appointment of new committee chairs. And one suggestion was that since we didn't really start our new structure of committees until October of 2020, that we're looking to, originally said we were going to do 2 years, then we talked about going back to 1 year. If we made that change in April of 21, it's really only, 6 months or whatever. So one suggestion from Mrs. McCulloch was to change that to October. That would allow more time for the liaison and the committee chair to work together. And then after that recommendation, we got another suggestion from Mrs. Hoadley, so I'm going to let her explain suggestion to us, and maybe we can come up with a decision.
So my suggestion was to wait until the April reorg meeting of 2022, because that's when you elect a president, vice president, secretary, and the president typically assigns the committees, at least under your current board policy. So it just aligns everything with the annual reorganization of the board. So if you wanted it to go a full year, which is what I believe all of you had wanted, this would actually go a year and a half versus a full year, but it would get you on a regular cycle for the committee appointments again.
Well, my thought on that, I'm just going to share my opinion, is the one disadvantage of doing that suggestion would be that the current chairs would have to chair their committee for a year and a half rather than a year. So that would be a negative. The positive to me would be that it aligns well with decisions about who will be the board president, who will be the vice president, and the board secretary. I want to hear other people's thoughts on what they think they'd prefer. Mr. Siegel.
As far-fetched of an idea as this might be, what if we do have a new president who is, would he then take over, or she, thank you, would that new board president take over your committee? And what if, let's say, you become vice president? You then take over Mr. Rollins' committee.
Right.
Do we just agree that we're going to just keep the committee chairs as they are until April of 22 and kind of suspend the idea that the president is going to have that position? Or do we just all agree that you're going to be president for another year?
Do anything we wanted to do, right?
Anything. Okay. Just
At first.
asking.
I think he has to win his election first.
That again, Jude?
I said, I think that you have to win your election first.
That's true. Okay. Minor detail, right? Okay. So, Ms.
Ain't running.
Okay.
My thought was that the April time frame would coincide better with the changing of president, vice president, so that those respective committees could change at that same time.
Where's Ms. Pearson?
I like the April 2022.
Okay.
In the meantime, though, it would be nice if there's other chair, or if the current chairs could start allowing others to shadow should they
Good
fall
idea.
into that role. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Either way, October or April. I mean, April is fine. If that's what everybody wants, it's fine with me.
So what do you think of Mr. Siegel's idea then of if we have a change in April of 21 officers, the existing chair staying on until April of 22? Okay. All right, we'll do that then. Okay. That's all
Hey,
that
Ken?
I have. Yes.
I don't ever remember saying October.
Well, I thought you
So
did.
I'm going to say I'm good.
Well,
I'm good with
I went
April.
back to look to see when we started the committee structure, and that's what October was, yeah. So.
Oh, okay. I remember saying I thought that it would be too hard to change this April, just because we just started so late, and we're finally getting into a little bit of a groove. So, which Ms. Pearson's idea of having a little bit of shadowing, the problem with that is you don't know who's going to be doing the committee. So, you know what I mean? You don't know who's going to be the president for next April, who's going to make the decision, what committee they're going to be on. I don't know. So it's hard to set up that shadowing with that in mind.
Highly paid positions too, by the way. Okay. All right. All right, good. Okay, well, so we'll go with that. We'll go with Ms. Hoadley's suggestion and the current board members chairing until April of 22, unless somebody's not reelected. So, right, so we move on now then to consent items, which from the Performance Monitoring Committee were payroll, accounts payable, purchase orders, construction bid request log, financial results for January of 21, fiscal year second quarter treasurer's report, 21 monthly cash and investment report, RPS managed work change order, and the walk-in cooler freezer rebid. And the consent items from governance, which included the meeting minutes of February 9th, contract purchase orders, and the Freedom of Information log. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Mr. Connor, is there a second? Second by Mr. Rollins. Are there any consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Susan?
I'm getting there. If I'm in the right area. So, $11. Oh, sorry, we're not there yet.
Yeah, we're doing 9 and 10 right now. Okay. No problem. Hearing none, then I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the consent items under 9 and 10.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the closed session consent agenda items, including the following items under number 11, the appointment of Jennifer Lawrence as the 12-month Executive Director of Student Services, appointment of Morgan Gallagher as a 12-month Executive Principal of Adaptive Learning, resolution authorizing dismissal of probationary teachers, resolution authorizing dismissal of fourth-year probationary teachers, resolution authorizing dismissal of non-tenured district administrator, and resolution authorizing dismissal of certain non-certified educational support staff, as well as the HR organization report and addendum. Is there a motion to approve these closed session items?
So moved.
By Mr. Connor?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. Now, are there any closed session consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Pearson.
11 C, D, E, and F.
E, and F?
C, D, E, F.
Charlie, Delta.
Thank you.
so then we'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of items 11A, B, and G, which are Jennifer Lawrence, Morgan Gallagher, and the HR report.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Would you like to do these each individually, or would you like to do them as a group?
Each individually.
All right. So first, I'll take a motion and a second to approve item 11C, which is the resolution authorizing dismissal of probationary teachers.
So moved.
By Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. Questions or comments?
There are no questions.
Sorry. All right. Okay, so we have a motion and a second for item 11C. Please call the roll.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel? Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins? The motion passes unanimously.
Next, I'll take a motion and a second for item 11D, which is the resolution authorizing dismissal of fourth-year probationary teacher.
So moved.
By Mr.
Second.
Connor, second by Mr. Rollins. Call the roll on the approval of item 11D.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins? Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Next, I'll take a motion and a second to approve item 11E, which is the resolution authorizing dismissal of non-tenured district administrator.
So moved.
Mr. Connor? Seconded by Mr. Rollins. Please call the roll on the 11E, non-tenured district administrator.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins? Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
I'll take a motion and a second to approve item 11F, which is the resolution authorizing dismissal of certain non-certified educational support staff.
So moved.
Mr. Connor, second by Mr. Rollins. Roll?
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins? Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We're now on to board member action steps, and one for me is to rewrite the operating guidelines for how we're going to handle committee chairs. Was there anything else that anyone had? I didn't write anything else down.
There's a closed session item regarding
That's right.
regarding the structure of employee compensation and supervision. Already sent that.
I saw that
already
you-
sent that
yeah,
out.
So Dr. Wolf's going to handle the follow-up on that. The other items?
And that's for outside district. I wouldn't mind having a conversation about the masks and the sports.
Okay. Would like to have a conversation about that? Is that what you said?
Well, I'd like to know what other board members
Okay,
think.
sure.
We
All right,
can't we can't go back and forth on email, so.
I'll open it up to the floor, but I'll just say, Jude, I support that we follow the rules, and the rules are properly wear your mask. We have to set an example as a district. I think we have to enforce the rules, and I think that responsibility falls under our athletic department and our coaches. I don't think the board needs to get involved in that. I think that's an administrative action that needs to be handled by our coaches. And if the coaches can't handle it, then their supervisor needs to address it with them. That's my opinion. So,
I just wanted to add, of course, we definitely want to follow, the protocol and the guidelines. But if, for whatever reason, they can't seem to keep the mask on, whether they're unable to breathe or whatever the case may be, perhaps if the athletic department can invest in those breathe easy little devices to wear underneath the mask to help them breathe, that would be nice. Thank you.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
I mean, I want to follow the rules. I think it's, all I'll say is that I think when you're in an athletic event, I can't speak to it, but I don't know how easy or hard it is to have masks on. So, I mean, if we do this as advisory, I mean, I know there's reasons for all this, and but I have to say there's a practical implementation side, and I'd just like to make sure that we're not too rigid on how we would approach something like this, although we would want to support the IHSA on the rules.
Ms. McCulloch, any follow-up?
Well, Ken, I agree with you. It's not our job as a board. It is the job of the athletics and administration. And as I said before, Dr. Jarrett has been implicit. I mean, he has really worked with the ADs and actually with Matt Parker, who's worked with the ADs, who've worked with the coaches, and we aren't there. And there's no consequences for the kids, and there's no consequences for the coaches. So if there's no consequences, then, and there are kids that are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I do understand, everybody has a little bit different physicality in terms of the breathing piece, but it's nice to say we're going to let those people, but we're not holding them accountable. So if we're just going to say, yeah, the board advises that you do this, but we're not going to do anything if you don't. So it won't go, it'll go the same way it's gone now. Glad we were more successful with cell phones.
Was thinking that I do watch the sports broadcasts in the 9 o'clock presentation because 10 o'clock's too late for me. But I thought it was getting better from what the pictures that I had seen of videos, but not real good in the small schools. I thought they were much worse than we were, but we're not perfect. We need to get better. So, well, our accountability, I guess, is for Dr. Jarrett to make sure that he's making his staff accountable, and we'll keep the pressure on you, Dr. Jarrett. Okay. Okay. All righty. Any other business for tonight? No further comments or agenda items. I'll take a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connors, or second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Siegel. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 7:39. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.